this is Dr. Tamsin Astor, and this is the newsletter for Wednesday, July 6th, 2022. What does the color of my underwear have to do with empathy? So about 20 years ago, when I moved to the US, I started subscribing to a few magazines as a new immigrant in America, in part because I loved the excitement of getting something fun through the mailbox, but also because thought it would help me to understand the culture a little better. So I subscribed to Rolling Stone, I subscribed to The Week, I subscribed to Playboy, I subscribed to a few American magazines. And so one Saturday afternoon, I sat down on this yummy brown leather couch that I had, which my ex got in the divorce, right? Little upsetting, but I got the other nice big fabric sofa. So I sat down with a cup of coffee and I dug into one of these magazines. And there was an article in this magazine on women's underwear and heteronormative couples, right? Which included the research, and don't ask me to recall the sample sizes or, the experimental groups, but the results were the majority. I do recall the results, right? I do recall the results. Women think that men want them to wear lacy black underwear. Women think men want them to wear black lacy underwear. Men think women want them to buy and wear brightly colored underwear. Men actually find, in the majority, white cotton underwear the most attractive. So before you get carried away, this piece is not all about underwear, but it is about perspective and communication and empathy. Because my first thought when I read this article was, why aren't they just talking to each other? Why don't they just ask each other and say, hey, I was going to buy you some underwear for Valentine's Day. What kind of underwear do you love? What kind of underwear do you feel sexy wearing? I love it when you wear this, right? And have a proper conversation about this. And as I thought a little bit more about this, I realized that the sort of fundamental core of this was about communication, right? Which is one of the most important pieces of cultivating a relationship with someone, right? And it's one of the most important ways also to understand people who have different lives and experiences. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, right, in the recent months is the rhetoric around the big issues that we're struggling with right now in the US, right? And how they're all often grounded in data, right? The age of so-and-so getting an abortion, or the number of children they have when they decide to get an abortion, right? Because that's a high percentage. The number of bullets fired by the police to an unarmed black man. In Akron last week, it was 90. 90. The percentage of LGBTQI youth attempting suicide, right? The number of degrees the world temperatures are rising every year, right? So the stats and the data which grounds it. However, it doesn't give the emotions, it doesn't give the feeling, it doesn't give the empathy and the perspective taking. And the more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm thinking we need to turn more to stories if we're going to help people connect and deal with these big issues, right? How are we going to understand if we don't listen to the stories of people who have different lives from us? How are we going to understand when people have had completely different lives from us, have had completely different educations, have had completely different perspectives, right? And face completely different realities on a regular basis? So what I'm wondering is, if we leaned into these varying perspectives and cultivated empathy by asking open questions and listening, what would it look like? What if we let go of that black and white thinking and lent into the gray area, lent into the continuum, right? And thought about, how does your lens of seeing the world differ from mine based on your experiences, right? So one of the things I think is so important here when you start talking about empathy and connection and perspective here is to make the distinction between empathy and pity. The distinction between empathy and pity. Brene Brown talks about it, right? And she says that pity is when you feel sorry for someone or a group of people. And what that does is it creates an other, right? It creates a separation between you and them, between me and them, right? And so it's like, oh, I feel sorry for you, but like, I'm not in that space. I'm not feeling that, like, that's separate, right? I'm going to feel sorry for you. That's pity, right? Whereas empathy is an emotional skill set that allows us to understand what someone is experiencing and to reflect it back to them, right? Empathy is an emotional skill set that allows us to understand what someone is experiencing, to reflect it back to them, right? That's how Brene Brown, Dr. Brown, defines empathy, right? And she draws this really interesting point about the near enemy, which is this Buddhist concept, right? And how pity and empathy seem like they're related, they seem like they're a similar concept, but actually they're subtly different. And pity actually undermines the ability to create empathy, right? So what I would love for you to do is to lean into this, because right now it might feel to you like the world is burning to the ground. So I invite you to lean into stories, the stories of people who live differently from you, the people who are walking different paths from you. And instead of going into this with a transactional or a promotional agenda, right? Like, I am going to promote my point of view and I encourage you to accept it. Or transactional, you know, I want you to understand that this is the step to take, that I'm going to be here. I'm transacting pieces of information, that this is the data, these are the numbers, right? Transformation. Let's lean in and cultivate empathy. And maybe if you make that your homework, you'll find it easier to grapple with the sense that the world feels like it's burning to the ground right now. I hope that was useful. Have a beautiful day. Mwah.